Hello, everybody. Welcome to Supernatural Live Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, coming to you from Talk Now Radio on to Supernatural Live Radio. Listener supported radio, or at least Talk Now Live is. I'm not sure if Pete's here asking for any support at this point in time or not. But I know me, I need help to remain live on the air, even if much less anything else. God knows if my computer gives out, I won't have anything else to get on the internet with. So, at any rate, today I'm going to be talking to Gordon Johnny Noto, and we're going to be discussing Planet X and Poleshifts. And Gordon's going to be kind of updating us on the latest on, where the earthquakes are at and any other things that we might need to know about. I've understood if Tommy Honksblood is right from a PM in his Skype this morning that there's been like 9 motherships spotted by the moon. Maybe Gordon's heard something about it, and maybe he hasn't. Maybe he'd like to enlighten us on anything he may have on it. So why don't we go ahead and bring Gordon in and get this started. Gordon, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing really well. I just came back from excavating some more snow. We had here in the middle of the Maine coast, we had 8 feet in 2 weeks. We had 11 feet in 3 weeks, and we've had 13 feet in 4 weeks. Totally unprecedented, and that's because of the earth wobble.
Yeah, I've heard about this earth wobble. It occurs, every 26,000 years?
No, I'm talking about daily, every single day. So.
Oh, okay. I think I must have misunderstood it.
This is because of Planet X approaching the Earth and causing it to wobble even more than it would. So, no, this is all this strange weather. 63% of the country's covered with snow right now, I think. And you had snow in Texas. Did you see any at your house?
Not at my house. However, I got family just north of me that was complaining about it in Tyler, Texas.
Yeah, so this is an extraordinary thing. Of course, I get all excited when they say it's going to be in the Tennessee Valley because that means it misses me entirely and hits Washington, D.C., so that makes me really happy. But, I love being on your show, Royce, and I've been on various shows that you have over the years and many times, but we haven't talked in a long time, and since then I've become the host of my own radio show called The Whole Agenda Radio Show. I took it over from Robert Pepino, and it's on every Friday night from midnight to 2 in the morning Eastern Time on Revolution Radio, which is freedomslips.com. So if anybody wants to hear me tonight on my radio show, I'll be on for 2 hours starting at midnight Eastern till 2 in the morning every Friday since August 1st.
Boy, you took the night shift.
Well, yeah, I'm sort of a night owl. I'm hoping that, and you never know how many listeners you have. Do you have any idea how many listeners you have? It's like driving me nuts.
Not as my one show alone. I understand that Revolution is getting like 1 million listeners.
Well, it's somewhere between 50,000 and 1 million. They upgraded all the servers in September, to take up to 1 million at a time streaming live radio. And then one host exceeded that. So then they created a dial to listen. So you can actually dial on your cell phone. Like if you have unlimited calling on your cell phone, you can dial Studio A or Studio B and you can listen on that, which is very convenient. Let's say you're in the doctor's office and he's keeping you waiting for an hour. You can just dial Studio A or Studio B and listen to Revolution Radio. So that's kind of cool. But they've never told me, but I know that they have at least close to 500,000 individual new internet addresses per month. But you don't know whether those people have 10 people in the room listening with them, or whether they only go there for a few minutes and switch to something else, or whether they stay there all day. It'd be great if there was an easy way to figure this out. But
well, the thing is, this is what I've been told by the administration myself, is that they don't have the means to track it show by show yet. I understand they might be working on it, but until they actually achieve it, we're kind of out in the dark on our individual stats.
Right. And I know that I'm pretty popular because Janet and I just went to the UFO Congress in Phoenix. It was actually outside of Scottsdale on an Indian reservation where there was a casino and a conference center and a hotel. And so many people came up to me and go, oh my God, there you are. I love you on the radio. I never hear enough of you. And of course, I'd need to take an ad out in the New York Times, a full page ad saying that I have a radio show every Friday night. But
Well, I know that you guys just started Revolution over there. Actually, kind of behind my show a little bit since I'd accidentally scheduled you and Tommy on at the same time, and y'all were both gracious enough to agree to share the slot, and we made a grand show out of it. And I think all the listeners over there liked hearing to both of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then y'all, I guess what, y'all either contacted Revolution or Revolution contacted you guys.
Well, I've been on Revolution Radio a lot, and then when Robert Pepino developed his music career, he actually wrote, I don't know how many songs, 49 or 60 songs, and he formed a group, and they signed a record album or a record contract, and so he doesn't have time to do radio shows anymore. He said, Gordon, you're the perfect one to take my show over, because I'd been on there like 25 times.
You've been on my show quite a few times, too.
Yeah, I know. But I'm telling you, there is so much happening now that you're going to need to have me on some more of your shows, because there's no way I can cover what's happening. There's so many interesting things that one thing, I'll just mention a few things, okay?
Okay.
Last week, a guy sat in front of me, unclicked his briefcase, pulled out a gallon Ziploc bag, and pulled out a piece of a crash saucer that he himself dug up outside of Gallup, New Mexico, 2 weeks ago.
Has it been confirmed that it's a...
Oh, yeah. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. It was aluminum. It was 10 inches long, 8 inches wide, and 2 inches thick, and it weighed less than a postage stamp.
Wow.
And it was honeycombed aluminum, and it had hexagonal cells like a bee would make, 2 inches thick. And on two opposite sides of each cell, there were very thin hair-like wires that came up, and they were joined at the top and the bottom with a little short wire that had four loops in it. And I have no idea what that was, and it was crushed. So you could see it had an impact, and there was moss growing out of the bottom of it. And so
it had been buried for some time.
So I said, "Oh yeah, since 1945." He said.
Whoa, wow.
He said that when the saucers started coming into Los Alamos to see what they were going to do with the nuclear bomb, and at that point they discovered accidentally they could shoot them down by aiming a radar dish at them. So the actual number of saucers that crashed in New Mexico is 45, and they started in 1945, and they crashed. I don't know when the last one was that crashed, but somehow after all these years, he and another guy have spent 10 years trying to find all these sites and scour them to see if there's anything left. And he said there's plenty of stuff the government didn't get at many of these sites. And he had just dug that up 2 weeks ago, and he was showing it to me, and the moss on it was still green.
Can you tell me this guy's name?
I don't remember his last name. It was Chuck.
I'd like to have him on my show.
Oh, yeah, he's been on a lot of shows. And I was on Coast to Coast January 28th.
Ah, that wasn't so long ago.
For a Planet X update. No, that isn't so long ago at all. But we've just been buried by snow. My whole life is spent, first the snow was too deep to plow because, plows are only so high, and the snow was over that. So then you have to go to excavating, and if that doesn't work, then you have to go to an actual excavator on tracks with a 27-foot arm to dig out of this stuff. We've been snowbound, sealed in, just like that movie Jack Nicholson, The Shining, 4 times just in the last 5 weeks, where we had to be excavated out. And then my tractor broke, and I had to get my tractor fixed, and I just got it back. And people call me up to excavate their driveways because you can't plow it. It's too deep. And the average daily high temperature in Bangor, Maine for the first 18 days of February was 4.7 degrees. In other words, you take the high temperature each day and you average it. First 18 days of February, the average high temperature was 4.7 degrees. So we've had unbelievable cold too. And I was turning over 10-foot snowdrifts. Janet was reaching in there with her arms and pulling out individual pieces of firewood and banging them on the road and stacking them. And then we put them in the bucket and bring it over to the house. And And we don't know how much firewood we have left because it's under 10 foot of drifts. So we finally had to buy some more firewood. But this winter's cost us $3,000 above normal in heating so far. So it's just that polar vortex, you know.
I know the winter months just eat me alive a lot more than the summer months do.
Yeah.
Trying to heat this little 2-bedroom house with electric heaters, and I cannot be in cold air because of my lung condition. So that runs up a high electric bill.
Oh yeah, the cold air affects me too because I had pneumonia twice and I nearly died both times. One was viral and one was bacterial, and so I got to be really careful about being cold. I can't be cold.
Well, I got colonized back in Halloween with that Pseudomonas pneumonia, and ever since then it keeps coming back because it's in my body and can't get it out basically, and it just keeps getting activated. And 2 of the 7 times I've had it since Halloween, I was incubated and almost died. So,
Roy,
know how you feel. In other words,
yeah. I just want to say this now. You know, you never know if you get to talk to somebody even tomorrow. You know, but I do love you, Royce, and I wish you well, and I wish you all the health in the world. Because there's so many exciting things happening that we have to survive to see the outcome of. Oh my God! Huh. Now, what's happening today that you might not be aware of is that NASA launched a satellite into orbit around the asteroid Ceres, and it comes in and goes into orbit today. Now, have you ever heard of the asteroid Ceres? Ceres.
Yes, I have, and I'm wondering why they would be launching a satellite there. I mean, what's there?
Okay, well, the very first telescopes on Earth that could take pictures of asteroids, and Ceres is the largest one. It's about 650 miles in diameter at the equator. The very first pictures of it showed lights on it, and this was over 100 years ago. And Nancy Lieder and I've been in touch with Nancy Lieder quite frequently. She and I have a really good relationship now, and she took a question to ask the Zetas about this, and they said that that's where the selfish extraterrestrials, that's their base in our solar system, is on the asteroid Ceres. And there's a whole city built on the surface. It looks like the moon. Like if you weren't exactly familiar with the moon and I showed you a picture of Ceres, you'd go, oh, that's a picture of the moon. But no, it's got craters and dust, and then right there, it's got lights everywhere. So that's one reason I think that NASA sent the satellite out there to see what's going on. And of course, the Zetas said that the selfish ETs that are there might not be too happy with the satellite going into orbit around them, taking pictures all day long. So they may shoot it down. So then NASA would have to announce, oh, we went all that way and then a rock took it out. So this is going on while we're talking right now. Dawn satellite is supposed to be going into orbit around Ceres, so who knows what's going to come of that. Now, were you familiar with that comet that the European Space Agency landed a spacecraft on about, I don't know, what do you think it was, 3 months ago, 2 months ago?
No, actually, that's news to me. I didn't even know you could land on a comet.
Well, it turns out that when Planet X came around the face of the sun in 2003, all the selfish and elite said, well, you promised us bases on the moon and Mars to move us to, and so we don't have to go through pole shift. Where are they? Now Planet X is here. We want to go. And selfish extraterrestrials said, well, actually, we weren't ever planning to take you anywhere, and so we won't be taking you. Well, at that time, when Planet X came around the face of the sun in December 2003, the European Space Agency had been detecting a radio signal from this one particular comet called, I think it was called P51. Let me see. I think I have that right here. So anyway, it was transmitting radio signals, believe it or not. P67. I think that's what it is. P60, Comet P67. So the listeners who are interested in this, you can do a YouTube search because when the European Space Agency landed on the comet, it had a little tripod thing and it fell over because the Council of Worlds didn't want it to be successful. So they moved it over to the edge of a precipice. And when it landed, it toppled over. But anyway, as it came in, it took pictures, and ESA retouched them, so it looked like a plain comet. But actually, an ESA employee released the unretouched pictures, and there's actually a selfish alien base on that comet that's abandoned. It's like maybe a lifeboat kind of a thing, and it has a radio signal. So it turns out that the European Space Agency and NASA together said, well, maybe if we send a satellite there, we can contact these extraterrestrials and they'll come and take the elite and the powerful off Earth so they don't have to go through pole shift. So I have a recording. Would you like to hear it of the radio signal that was coming from P67?
From the comet, in other words.
Yeah, this is the signal that had been picked up since before 2003.
Wait a minute. Kevin Smith, we were talking about him before the show started. He did a segment about a signal coming from somewhere in outer space before he passed away. Could this be the same thing?
I don't think so, because nobody knew it until, for some reason, ESA released the radio signal. So, like when you listen to it, it's sort of upsetting. It's almost like giving you the heebie-jeebies. And we have no idea what it says. It could be that somebody left an open microphone near a compressor and it's just a mechanical thing, or it could be that it's a broadcast message in computer code, which makes more sense. And it says, if you need an emergency life station, you can land here. And the unretouched pictures showed a dome on the surface with a rim on it and a nipple on top. Well, that was interesting because photographs have been taken of the moon showing the same dome cover on the moon. And also somebody going through Google Earth discovered the same dome cover on the wall of a cliff, but in the open position. And it's like the extraterrestrials go to the extraterrestrial Home Depot store and say, yeah, I'll take one of those spaceport domed covers, please. And who's making them? How come they're all the same? So it's a very interesting thing, but it's abandoned. But you remember the days of dial-up?
Yeah.
And you'd hear your computer make this incredible sound,
kind of like a fax machine.
Well, yeah. Imagine that was broadcast out into space, and people picked it up, and they go, "Wow, I wonder if that's the language they speak, or what is that?" Well, listen to this. This is the signal that was picked up from Comet P67. Here it goes. It's going to take a little while to start, but like I say, it's quite interesting. Okay. Sounds like an insect at first.
Yeah, it does. I don't think I've ever heard that sound before.
Well, this is interesting because the European Space Agency acknowledged this is the first confirmed extraterrestrial radio message ever captured.
They use the terminology extraterrestrial?
Yeah. Well, it's on a comet. We didn't put it there.
Sounds like it's being choked off.
So that's totally fascinating.
You're kind of breaking up there, Gordon. You sound like the actual noise of the signal.
Oh, dear.
Pardon me.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the signal, and it's kind of eerie. I mean, it's not like a pleasant thing. It's not like a song where, come on in if you need a place to fix your spaceship, land here, and we've got a complete space station with all supplies, and you can just park yourself here and fix whatever's wrong and survive long enough to get rescued or take off again. So, but see, the question is like, are there broadcasts from Ceres? Well, that's never been released. Because see, the European Space Agency has a different attitude than NASA. So they're both covering up the fact there's extraterrestrial bases on the comet and on Ceres. But the thing is that they did release, the European Space Agency did release that recording of the radio transmission, and it's nonstop. It just repeats like that over and over and over again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I would think it's some sort of like a message, like if you're in trouble, you can land here. If you need a place, here's where you can resupply, or but it doesn't seem to have anybody there. But in other words, it's sort of abandoned. It's not an active base. But Ceres, where the Dawn spacecraft is going today, has lights all over the place. And as Zeta said, there are cities built on top of it. And if you were in orbit, you can see every building and every light. So if NASA is going to send pictures back to Earth and release them to the public, they're going to have to do a lot of retouching, I would think.
Well, they don't want us to see exactly what they're finding. They are. A lot of airbrushing going to have to go on there. Exactly.
So today's really an exciting day to see how this is going to turn out. So any of your listeners that are interested in ETs or what's going on with this whole subject should follow this story. And there's plenty of news on it all over the place. So it won't be hard to find. But the first pictures haven't come back yet. But on my show tonight, I've got an amateur astronomer, Conrad, and he's going to discuss the fact that the very first Earth telescopes that were able to take pictures of Ceres showed lights on it. And right on the equator, there's a horizontal east-west line, and then of equal length going north-south is a vertical line, and it looks like a crosshairs right on Ceres. And it's like as if the ETs set up a latitude and longitude system, and they use the center of the crosshair as zero longitude, like we have on Earth.
Equilateral points.
Greenwich, England, is the zero longitude. Everything east of Greenwich is east, and everything west of Greenwich is west. So it's really interesting. Like, what the hell's going on there now? What's going on with these people is Nancy Leader has done several questions to the Zetas and given the answers that there are selfish ETs from the fourth dimension. Now, in the fourth dimension, the next dimension up, you have unselfish planets and you have selfish planets. You do not have any planets where good and evil are mixed like you do on third dimensional Earth. So this is a school, and we're about to graduate some people to the fourth dimension, and they'll be reborn on Earth as an unselfish planet, those people that are worthy of graduating. But the selfish ones, people who make a conscious choice to organize all their intentions and behavior around selfishness, they have selfish planets. And these selfish ETs wanted to come to the third dimension to mess with Earth. So the thing is that when they come from the fourth dimension to the third dimension, and then they try to go back, they screw it up. And they have terrible, terrible accidents, like that movie, The Fly. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Royce? Where one
old black and white movie.
Yeah, a guy. There was, I think, 2 or 3 of them. They were great. I loved them. They showed these 2 glass boxes, and they were going to teleport or transport something from inside one box to the other box, and who knows where they went in between the boxes, but. At one point, they put this guy in the box, and there was a fly buzzing in there. And in the other box, he came through with a full-size human with a fly head, and a little teensy fly with a little teensy human head. And so I spoke to somebody the other day. I thought everyone had seen that movie, but he goes, "Oh, I never heard of it. I never saw it." Now, geez, what did you miss? But that's what happens when the selfish extraterrestrials try and come to our dimension to mess with us, and then they try to go back. They screw it up, and then the Council of Worlds, the unselfish ETs, have to be called in to help straighten it out, and sometimes they can't. And finally, they made a rule. They said, look, if you're selfish and you're coming to this dimension to mess with humans, then we're not going to help you. So you have to stay on the third dimension for the rest of your life. Well, the people the selfish people from the selfish planets in the fourth dimension that come here, they don't want to come here. But they've been told either you go to the solar system in the third dimension, or else we'll kill you. You have no choice. So they're here unhappily, and their job is to recruit people by creating fear and anger and all the negative emotions on Earth with humans. And who knows how long they've been doing that. If pictures have been taken of Ceres for over 100 years, you can just imagine. Did you ever hear that famous archaeologist, Flanders Petrie?
Actually, I have. I've read about him.
He was in England, and they have a museum named after him. And then he moved, after he worked on the pyramids for a long time, he moved to Jerusalem. Did you hear that story?
No, I don't think I heard that one.
Okay, well, he lived in a house in Jerusalem, and then he died, I guess, years ago. And for some reason, the house was kept just the way he had it. And he had this one room that had a library, bookshelves all the way to the ceiling. And so for some reason, about 3 months ago or 4 months ago, they decided to take the building down. I guess real estate in Jerusalem is expensive, and this was an old house, and we'll just tear it down and build a new one, right? So the workmen go into the library and they start pulling the bookshelves apart, and there was a swivel door. Part of the wall of bookshelves was a swivel door with a hidden room behind it. So they go in there and they find all these bas-relief carvings from the pyramids that Flanders Petrie had physically removed from the pyramids that show the gray aliens, the Zetas, carved in three-dimensional bas-relief in stone. So the Zetas were asked a question about that, and they said that yes, they've been on Earth for thousands and thousands of years, and the Anunnaki were the selfish ETs, and they weren't very advanced, and there were the unselfish Zetas were contacting the Pharaoh and the Egyptian government, and then their faces and their images were carved into stone, and Flanders Petrie had hidden this. Well, the thing was have you ever heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Who hasn't?
Yeah. So, when they were found, they were brought to a museum in the Holy Land, somewhere, I guess, in Jerusalem, founded by the Rockefeller Foundation. So did you realize that the Rockefellers have control over the Dead Sea Scrolls? They're the ones translating it and releasing what they find to the public, which puts some element of doubt into what they say the scrolls say, because they're piecing together these little fragments. It's going to take years, but they've gotten many manuscripts in little pieces, and they're just it's like a giant puzzle, and they're just trying to figure out which scroll each piece came from and where in the scroll it went to, and then with tweezers put it back together again between two glass plates, and then taking pictures of it and translating it. So that's a lot of work. Well, anyway, as soon as the Rockefeller Museum heard that these bas-reliefs of gray aliens, they came and collected them all, and nobody's seen them since.
You don't suppose they could have been mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Rockefellers have kept that omitted that from the public?
Well, that's the thing, is what's going on with the Dead Sea Scrolls that we'd all like to know. Is there anything in there that we should know? And we'll never know, because the Rockefellers are releasing the Dead Sea Scroll information so slowly that, it's going to be generations before anybody really knows what they all said. But the thing is guess what? The workmen that were tearing the house apart had cell phones with them and took pictures of these statues and these carvings before the Rockefeller Museum carted them off.
So what happened to those pictures?
Well, they got released to the public. So you can look this up online, and you can see the Flanders Petrie house in Jerusalem, the pictures of what was found behind the bookcase.
Okay, so pictures behind the bookcase, Petrie's Flanders house.
Yeah, Flanders Petrie, that was his name, Flanders. I guess he was knighted, so he's Sir Flanders Petrie, but he's dead. And this was his old house. So, but if the workmen hadn't taken cell phone pictures of these statues and these carvings, then, we wouldn't even know. I mean, because the Rockefellers would have just come and taken it and put it in their museum and buried it and hidden it. So obviously, when Flanders Petrie was exploring the pyramids and he found the gray alien carvings, he decided, whoa, the world isn't ready for this. And he had them all crated up and shipped to his house and hidden in a secret room. Isn't that interesting?
Well, you know what? At that point in time, he was correct. Look what happened with the, what was it? Wells was his name, with the War of the Worlds or something like that?
Right. H.G. Wells.
H.G. Wells, that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
What happened to H.G. Wells? What do you mean?
Well, remember, he did that radio show and everybody panicked.
That was Orson Welles.
Oh, okay. You got,
I'm
getting people transposed here, ain't I?
Yeah, that was in 1938 on a radio show out of New York, yeah.
But that was still about the same time back by Flanders Petrie, and, he would have been right. They weren't ready for it at that time. Look at the panic Wells brought up.
Right, exactly. So, but, do you really feel comfortable with wealthy and powerful people deciding what you can handle and what you can't handle?
Oh, I'll be honest with you. I'm not comfortable with anybody at all deciding that for me.
Exactly. So, these things are all linked together, and so the thing is that, obviously the Zetas, the unselfish Zetas, have been around contacting the world for thousands of years. So why wouldn't there have been selfish ETs contacting the world for thousands of years, trying to stir up negative emotions? Because what they're doing is recruiting for fourth dimensional prison planets. And by prison planets, I mean, when you make a conscious choice to be a selfish person, it's like you're auditioning for your next lifetime. And your next lifetime, you will be born on a planet where everyone's as or more selfish than you. So, well, isn't
that kind of like the same decision between heaven and hell?
Well, in a sense, it is, because you get to live what you visualized. So it's like you have creator powers and you used it to visualize selfishness, and now you got to live thousands of lifetimes of selfishness. Whereas for a regular person who's not selfish, they live 1,000 lifetimes before they wake up, and they say, like a bad Jack Nicholson movie, they say, "Is this all there is?" And then they realize that, oh, I could organize all my behavior around selfishness or unselfishness. And if you choose unselfishness, then that allows you to graduate. And as I've said before on your shows, the Earth, after the apocalypse, the Earth is going to graduate to being a fourth dimensional unselfish planet. Now, I was talking about the golden rule on one of my shows, and I brought that up with Nancy, and Nancy said, look, if 90% of the world followed the golden rule, which I think everyone knows what that is, but I will tell you what it is. It's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So if before you do anything to anybody, you think, would I like to have that done to me, and you use that as a measure, it's going to help your behavior a lot. And so if 90% of the Nancy Leader said, you're right, Gordon, if 90% of the population practice the golden rule, then the unselfish ETs would come in and stop the tribulation, stop the apocalypse, stop the pole shift, because there would be no reason to have it, because everybody's graduated to the next level in consciousness already, and therefore they don't need to be punished. So,
yeah, I've often said that if everybody would just simply abide by the golden rule, there would be no war, there'd be no starvation, there'd be a lot better things here on this here planet. Because let's face it, the golden rule applies to feeding the hungry as much as it does anything else. If you'd want to be fed when you were down and out, then you should want to feed somebody while they're down and out. Give an example. It applies in many arenas. Not just if you don't want to be hit, don't hit, in other words.
Exactly. It's so simple, and you don't really need to have a particular religious background like Muslim or Christian or Jewish to follow it and to understand.
That's just exactly the point, though. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Gordon. I don't have a habit of it. I try not to. But in this particular case, I wanted to get this one in. Is the whole point going on here, though, is the church is the very thing that fosters not going by the golden rule.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole point, is is these religions were actually created to create selfishness. They do create fear and anger, and in a sense, if you're a good person, you have to see through all of that somehow, and then realize that we're all one, and we came from the same place. We're probably going back to the same place, and so if I hurt you, I'm really hurting myself. Well, it takes a certain amount of understanding to appreciate that, Royce. Not everybody understands that right now, but they should.
Well, so many people have been taught that we are not all one.
Well, that's
so if
the
we're
thing.
not all one, why care?
And then you've got like the Jews being told they're the chosen people. Well, who told them they were the chosen people? It was Jehovah, the selfish ET that was pretending to be God. So, Well,
I'll be honest with you. I've done a lot of study in this, and I think you are well aware I've done a bunch of study in it. And I kind of lean toward thinking that maybe perhaps they got this bright idea because their ancestors might have made it with some of these selfish ETs, and they're like, well, we're the bloodline. We have a right to be, in other words.
Right, those are the blue bloods.
In other words.
Exactly. Those are the blue bloods. And scary things are happening even today. I mean, I was at the UFO conference, and somebody told me about a roadblock in California, and they wanted your DNA. They told everybody, they stopped your car, a whole line of cars, and they wouldn't let anybody go until they spit into a test tube. And then they capped it and wrote their name on it, and then they let them go. Well,
trying to find out who is theirs and whose is not.
Well, what the hell is that? It's like people have been saying, well, there are all these FEMA camps that are going to be, death camps, or they're going to be slave camps, but this person was saying that now, because of this, that they're giving these spit tests on the road. And they weren't testing it for alcohol or drugs. They were just capping it in a test tube for a DNA test. Obviously, they didn't say they were doing that, but if you stop the interstate highway and you make everybody give their spit, it's like they're trying to get a broad spectrum DNA sample. And maybe these FEMA camps that people have been talking about for years, maybe what they're going to do is they're going to select certain groups of people because of their DNA. And those are the people that are going to be in the camps for God knows what reasons, probably including breeding, but maybe who knows what, I mean, so these are issues that are all in the background, but, they're floating around, they're current. You can say, well, that's just ancient history. No, it's not. There's stuff going on that's pretty wild today. So these are really exciting times, but just to talk about the weather, because that's really the best example that Planet X is here, is the jet stream normally goes from west to east above the equator and from east to west below the equator, which is easy to understand. If you flush a toilet in the northern hemisphere, the water circles the drain differently than it does in the southern hemisphere.
Like a whirlpool.
And tornadoes form in the reverse, and whirlpools in the ocean form in the reverse, and so, but if you look at the jet stream, it's been making these giant loops, and the reason why it's making these giant loops is because the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is a line of mountains that goes from Iceland to Antarctica. So if you go from New York to London, you think, well, the ocean gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and then it gets shallower as you approach England, and finally it gets back up to the surface when you get to England. But actually, in the middle of the Atlantic, there's a line of mountains that goes from Iceland to Antarctica. You can't see them if you're in a boat in the Atlantic Ocean. They're too far below the surface to see. But there's a huge crack right down the middle of it, and iron magma is welling up in the middle of this crack. And what it's doing is it's going to make the Atlantic Ocean wider. And it's slowly pushing England and New York further and further apart. Of course, it's like minimal now. You wouldn't even notice it. But that iron bar just below the surface, well, Planet X is 30 million miles away, laying on its side with its North Pole pointed at our equator. So as the sun rises over the Atlantic, because Planet X, if everyone would go out right now, the next clear day, and just hold your digital camera up and take a picture of the sun, and then tell me that's normal. It's not normal. And there's like this bright glowing caterpillar from the 3 o'clock to the 5 o'clock position on the side of the sun. And you can't, You know what people say is that everybody, all the younger generations are all texting each other and they're surfing the web on their cell phones and they never look up. They never look up. But if anybody knew what they were looking at, take a picture of the sun. Don't look through the lens. You'll burn out your eyes. Just point the camera at the sun, take your digital picture, and then look at it. There's a glowing caterpillar on the right-hand side of the sun. Those are the twin-stranded tails of Planet X stretched towards the Earth. Well, the North Pole is pointed at the Earth, so when the sun rises, Planet X is next to the sun. So as the sun rises, Planet X is right there with the sun. So as it rises over the Atlantic Ocean, it pulls Iceland down towards the sun. And that means the sun all day long over the Atlantic Ocean is heating the North Atlantic. Well, that's interesting because we only had one Atlantic hurricane this year. But guess what? After the Earth turns a little more and the sun sets over the Atlantic, the North Pole of Planet X releases the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, releases it, and the Earth springs back because the North Pole of Planet X repels the North Pole of Earth. So when the sun is over the Pacific, the North Pole of the Earth is further back, so therefore the sun is sitting over the same spot in between the Indian and the Pacific Oceans south of the equator, heating the water there. Well, guess what? The combination of the Indian Ocean, where I think they call them typhoons, and the Pacific, where they call hurricanes cyclones, the total number of typhoons and cyclones in the Pacific and Indian Ocean this year was 81. Now, when has there ever been that ratio before? 81 hurricanes in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean and 1 in the Atlantic. And that is proof of Earth wobble. But another proof is you look at the weather maps and they go the polar vortex. Well, there's this huge loop. The jet stream is not going horizontally. It's looping, and that's because the Earth wobbles, and it wobbles you under the Arctic air, and then it wobbles you back under the tropical air, and then you get these giant storms. In the meantime, everybody knows the air has gotten colder, so global warming is a lie. But there is climate change, but it's not because of fossil fuels. It's because of the presence of Planet X wobbling the Earth. Well, the North Pole of Planet X is 23 times stronger magnetically than the North Pole of Earth. So when it's pointed at the equator, it churns all the magma, and the magma churns and warms the surface, which the surface is, the Earth is 75% oceans. So it's warming the bottom of the oceans, and that's created the ocean temperatures to rise 1 degree just in the last year. 1 degree. Well, that makes for bigger storms too. But the air has gotten colder, so this whole thing about fossil fuels is one giant lie to cover up Planet X. And NASA just released an animation video. People were saying, well, why is there red dust in the rain in Texas? And NASA actually hired an animation studio to do a cartoon showing that winds blow off the Sahara and blow the dust across the Atlantic into Texas.
That's a long way to blow.
Well, it's ridiculous because, first of all, north of the equator, all the winds go west to east. So there's no way that any dust from the Sahara could come to Texas unless it went all the other way around the Earth.
I know it was blowing from Mars into the Earth and hitting us in Texas.
Exactly. So, see, NASA is planning to cover up. But then, like, I'll give you an example. About 3 weeks ago, NASA announced that they're still looking for Planet X because of, and I love this, perturbations in the movements of the outer planets cannot be explained unless there's another large body out there. Okay, baby, now we're talking. And then if you looked up Nancy Lieder and Zeta Talk on Wikipedia, you would find the single most abusive, nasty, lying description of a person ever. And thousands of people, myself included, have tried to get Wikipedia to change that description. It lies, and it says that she's the leader of a cult. It's a hoax. It said that Planet X is going to collide. That she said Planet X is going to collide with the Earth, which it's not going to do. And because as I've said on your show before, gravity pushes, it doesn't pull. And of course, that's a 400-year-old lie we've all been told. So anyway, at the same time that NASA announced they're still looking for Planet X, and don't you love it? They spelled it EX, Planet EX. And that's so that if you did a Google search, you wouldn't be as likely to come up with Zeta Talk. Because if you do a Google search for Planet X, the number one thing you get is Zeta Talk. Well, anyway, mysteriously, 3 weeks ago, they changed the Wikipedia description to be complimentary of Nancy. They took out all the stuff that was abusive and lying and nasty. They took every bit of it out. And now if you read the Wikipedia description on Nancy Lieder, it's very complimentary. And I said, how did that happen, Nancy? And she said, well, it's Obama. He's getting ready to make the announcement about the passage of Planet X through our solar system. And obviously he told some people at the top they've got to, change it. So the minute he says there's a rogue planet, the next thing people are going to say is, isn't that called Planet X? Then they're going to do a Google search, and then they're going to discover that the Zetas have 40,000 pages on Zetatalk.com describing what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, starting in 1995. So at the same time that they start reading that, and they're going, where did this come from? It came from Unselfish ETs. So it's like you're going to have disclosure of ETs at the same time that you're going to have disclosure of pole shift. So there are things happening, and I love being on your show, but I think I need another 9 hours.
Yeah, you was mentioning earlier you had at least 10 hours worth of material, but we can only schedule other shows. But real quick, like before I forget, one of the things I wanted to mention to you is I was giving your link out to somebody at Earth Changes in the Pole Shift the other day, learn more about you. But according to the webpage, it says here, Gordon James Johnny Noto is no longer a member of Earth Changes. Have you left the site?
Oh, they had 5,000 members, and they cut 4,500 of them.
Wow.
But it's okay because I'm friends with Nancy, and then I ask her questions sometimes, and she goes, "Wow, that's a really good question." And she takes it as
her site, isn't it?
Yeah. Poleshift.ning.com. It's actually this guy in Holland named Gerard, but he's like this close to Nancy, so he's working with Nancy. So Nancy takes questions from the public that are asked on poleshift.ning.com. So, but I'm a little too controversial because I'll talk about stuff that's not necessarily only from the Zetas. I'll talk about stuff that's from anywhere I think is important. And so they thought I was...
I get controversial too sometimes.
They thought maybe I don't know what they thought. Because there were lots of people that never even wrote a thing and never said a word were taken off the site.
Well, Johnny, so, I'm sorry.
But,
you're fixing to speak.
Like I say, when I come up with a good question, Nancy asks it and she puts it on Poleshift Ning and she says the question was from me. So she's given me credit. I mean, and that's all. That's the only reason I was a member over there was so I could ask questions.
Oh, and now for you.
Now that I talk to Nancy all the time, I can just ask her myself. Usually I talk to her every day. I mean, she's really a wonderful person. She, on one hand, she seems a little grumpy and abrupt and stuff like that, but she's so busy with this stuff, and she doesn't have time to chit chat or go over stupid questions or answer a question that's been asked 1,000 other times or a question that the Zetas have already answered. And so she's all business. I mean, and she's in her mid-70s. She's in not the greatest health. She's in pretty good health, but she's got like congestive heart failure and diabetes and all kinds of stuff. She's having trouble walking, and she's on a lot of medication. And she does this for free. She lives in an old farmhouse, and it was her grandfather's house. And she's living a less is more lifestyle. And she devotes 100% of her energy every day just to taking questions from the public and answering it and running the Zeta Talk websites. So they take your question and answer it on poleshift.ning.com. And then once it's posted there, then it moves to zetatalk.com, which has got all 40,000 pages of 20 years of questions and answers.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, me and you were talking about a controversial subject a few minutes ago. I would personally title it, I don't know, the sin of religion. Well,
Yeah.
something come across my computer screen while you and me were talking just now that
Hmm.
goes along with that. I thought you might want to hear about, and everybody listening might want to hear about. So why don't
Yeah.
I share that real quick?
Please do.
You can find it on alternet.org. It says here, Christian chaplain fired for preaching compassion and love over violence of American Sniper, which is American Sniper was a movie I'm sure everybody knows by now. Uh, but the thing about this is, though, Johnny, you and me were just discussing earlier about how the church has fostered so much violence. And here's a classic thing of what we're talking about, describing how not only has it fostered it, one of their own preachers gets in trouble if he preaches compassion over it. What does that really say?
Well, I got to tell you, and this is a personal opinion. It's not official church position, but and I'm not Catholic. I'm not a member of any religion, but I really think that Pope Francis is doing Jesus better than Jesus did Jesus. That guy, and he the other day he said, "I'll probably last about 3 years before they kill me." He goes, I'm planning to be assassinated within the next 3 years, so don't be surprised. But look at what he's done. The church is an old hierarchy of the elite and the powerful. When you're a cardinal in the church, you have the best housing, usually a mansion. You've got a very expensive church. You've got all the resources of the Catholic Church available to you. You eat the best dinners, breakfasts, and lunches that anyone could ever hope to have. You've got all the clothing and all the resources that a very wealthy, elite, powerful person would have. And they do not like what he's doing. Like when he was in Argentina, he said to a woman, she goes, "Well, my husband divorced me. Can I still take communion?" And he said, "Of course." And then he said that the mafia should not be respected by the church. Well, in Sicily and in Italy, when they have these church processions, you probably heard of that or seen at least one on TV, but on a saint's day, like let's say Saint Gustav, or what, I don't even know if there's a Saint Gustav, but let's say they have a procession because maybe that's the town where Gustav lived, and they have a procession, and when they come to the house of a mafioso, they stop in front of the house, they stop the procession, and then the priest especially blesses the mafioso's house, and then the procession continues. And these guys are like killing people all week long. Then they go into church, they confess their sins, and then they give a large donation to the church, and the priest says, "Oh yes, all your sins are absolved, don't worry." And then they go back to business the next week, and then they do it all over again. So Pope Francis has said, no more stopping processions at the church, no more giving communion to mafia, and no more supporting the mafia in any way, shape, or form. So these are things that, if it's going to be church dogma, then they have to have a convocation with all the cardinals. Then they have to propose a new rule, like if you're divorced and it's not your fault, you can still take communion. Then they would have to adopt it, vote and adopt it, and then it would be church dogma. But here's Pope Francis. He knows they're never going to change anything about the church. He knows that. And so he's just going around telling people offhand to reporters and other people. He's telling what he really thinks, which is it's not going to change.
He can't change the church, but he can expose the church.
Right. And so now he's working on because historically the Vatican Bank has laundered money for drug cartels, secret governments, dictators, tyrants, just a horrendous story of what goes on with money laundering in the Vatican Bank. Well, he's trying to expose that and get rid of it. Well, good luck. And that's why he said that he fully expects to not live more than 3 years, and he will be assassinated. And that's because he's like the loose cannon on the deck. The people that are in power can't take it. And he's not even living, he lives simply in a small house instead of living in the Vatican, surrounded by $1 billion worth of art and paintings and frescoes and
won't
marble.
even take a ride. He walks, I understand.
Exactly. So I mean, he's like, forget the return of Jesus. This guy is like out Jesusing Jesus right now. And he's a really kind, compassionate, loving person. And he's
I guess you
feeding
got
the
to kind of
whole.
figure the man's probably in his 70s or 80s. Figured he wouldn't have long to live anyway. What are they going to do? Wax off 4 or 5 years off of his life that he might have been there? I mean, it's not a tremendous number. At least he can get in something that's important to him before he goes.
Right, and he can make the changes that need to be made, but they need to be made today. They needed to be made yesterday, but nobody was making them. But he became the Pope, and now he's trying to do what he can. But they're not going to propose any of this for a major convocation and change the religion at all.
They might
I mean,
just try to paint him as a nut and kick him out of office.
no, they'll just shoot him.
Now,
You can. I'm not a betting man, Royce, but if you had to take a side on that issue, I would bet they're going to kill him. There'll be something happens.
well, time tells all, I always say. But
It's shocking.
I don't want to let you escape without asking you. You've heard anything about those 9 motherships around the sun that Tommy Hawksblood was talking about?
Well, there's you got to go to the NASA SOHO site. It's you do a search on the internet for NASA plus SOHO, SOHO, and you'll come up with a page that's got 8 little pictures. And the last 2 are the pictures of the sun that show Planet X. And of course, they can't show you Planet X, so they paste over the Planet X with the worst paste job you've ever seen in your life. But the other 6 pictures, they're of the sun through special filters. And you regularly, not just recently, but regularly, you see things that just blow your mind. You see spheres and disks, the size of Earth, some that are even bigger than Earth, going right up to the sun and funneling like plasma out of the aura of the sun to the ship. So this is like alien technology, like, mind-boggling.
Yeah, you'd have to wonder what kind of technology can withstand the heat of the sun.
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain. Is that there are 7 billion unselfish ETs on Earth now. That's more than one for each person, and what they're doing is they're on a separate frequency. So, like when you have your radio in front of you and you're listening to your favorite radio station, and then you turn the tuning knob and you go to a different frequency and you get a different station. But all the stations are there on your radio. You just can only tune to one at a time, which is good because if you tune to all of them, it'd be very confusing. But so that's what these fourth dimensional ETs with the fourth dimensional technology, they're at a higher frequency than we are, and we can't see them. Now, that's what's interesting about my wife, Janet, is that she can actually see fourth dimensional ETs with her eyes, and she can also see below our level. She can see dead people. So, like, she was at talking to this woman, and she said, "I'm really sorry to mention this to you, but there's a young guy about 20 years old standing behind you without a face." And she started sobbing instantly. And she said, "My son was riding his motorcycle without a helmet, and he crashed, and he ground his head into the pavement, and he died." And Janet said, "Well, I see him behind you, and he's standing there right behind you right now with his hands on your shoulder." Well, she couldn't feel that was true, but Janet could see it. So Janet's seen a lot of things that and I can, and both of us can hear telepathically if they speak to us, which they don't usually do, but they do from time to time, the ETs. And so this is you could have an ET house right part of your house, and you're walking right through it just to go from the living room to the kitchen. You're walking right through a fourth dimensional ET house, but you wouldn't know it because it's on a different frequency. If you could attune yourself to that frequency, you would instantly go, "Oh my God, there's an invisible dome with millions of people right outside my house." Whatever it is they've got going on that you can't see now, you'd see. So they're there, and they can come and do things like that fourth dimensionally. Like maybe on the fourth dimension, the sun isn't hot at all. Maybe it's just a huge source of plasma, and they just come and suck it up. And the filters that they use on the SOHO satellite, the infrared or ultraviolet filters, show this happening. But you can see that all the time. Just keep watching those pictures. They change them every 10 minutes. All 8 pictures change every 10 minutes. But anything they don't want you to see, they paste right over it. So you're looking at a picture that was just downloaded 10 minutes ago, and it's got these bad paste lines in it. I mean, a third grader could do better job of photoshopping the image to make it look like, but they're just pasting vertical bars right over whatever they don't want you to see. So if you pay attention to that, go out and take a picture of the sun, follow the weather patterns. This is all evidence of that Planet X is here and about to cause pole shifts. So the next thing is, when is the president going to announce it? Well, the elite and the powerful don't want him to announce it. They want you to keep your nose to the grindstone, keep paying your mortgage, pay your credit card, pay your car loan, stay at your job. And so even if they announce it, they're going to say, well, you don't have to change anything. We'll let you know if there's anything to worry about, which, of course, is a lie, because, of course, you've got to worry. I'm telling you right now, get at least 100 miles from the coast, at least 200 feet up, and more is better. So you can be closer to the coast if you're at a greater elevation, but the oceans are going to rise 700 feet. So let that be part of your guide over where you should be and how you should survive. But all this stuff is going on, and now the earth changes have picked up. The New Madrid Fault, Nancy just did, the Zetas said that the New Madrid Fault is going to erupt this year, 2015. So there's a prophecy that you can wait for.
You'll see that one all over the Facebook post when it happens.
Oh, yeah. And like they had 11 quakes in Plainfield, Connecticut about 2 months ago. And I asked Nancy, what the hell is that? And she goes, there's a fault line that goes from New Madrid, Missouri to Boston. And that big quake in 1811 rang the church bells in Boston. She goes, that's movement on that fault. And that fault is going to erupt this year. And not in its final devastation, but pretty devastating. Because all those cities that have been built down there, a lot of them that people live in these cheesy wood frame houses or else brick houses. And bricks do not survive earthquakes very well, as you know.
They survive hurricanes a little bit better than frame houses do.
Yeah, that's true because of the weight.
Now, going to mention we got like 2 minutes left. Is there anything you wanted to throw out there real quick in the last 2 minutes?
Just remember that if you want to listen to me regularly, I'm on Revolution Radio every Friday night, Studio A at midnight Eastern Time.
Also, you can keep track of me and my show because I will be inviting Johnny back. Been doing it for years. I see no reason to stop.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too, guy. But for right now, I got to cut loose and make room for the next host or whatever they do next on Supernatural Live Radio when I sign out. I'm going to shut her down right there. You folks have a good one.
God bless you, Royce.
See you next Friday.
Okay.